This week, Larry brings us a technical segment called Apple AirTag Detection and Simulation. We learn all about Apple AirTags. In the security news, FreeBSD and the software supply chain, open source implies that it's open. Hard-coded passwords are always bad. On again, off again, on again. Privilege escalation defined. Preparing for quantum. So many vulnerabilities. Cosmic Strand, another UEFI firmware rootkit, and reviving ancient computers. All that and more on this episode of Ball Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. If your websites conduct transactions or collect sensitive data, you have a material risk on your hands that could cost millions. The client-side security gap is being exploited daily with attacks like digital skimming, credential harvesting, and form jacking. 98% of sites use first and third-party JavaScript to power and enhance the user experience, opening up the client side to the adversary. Unlike most things in security, there is an easy fix. Start by understanding your risk. Let Source Defense give you a site-wide risk report this week. Visit securityweekly.com/source defense. Every hack follows the same pattern. First, hackers exploit a human error, like a leaked key or a secret left in code. They gain a foothold and then pivot, moving from one compromised system to the next. Teleport breaks this cycle. Open source Teleport gives every engineer, every piece of hardware, every application an identity, replacing secrets like passwords and keys with auto-expiring identity-based certificates. Learn why most visionary businesses in the world choose Teleport at securityweekly.com/teleport.
And welcome to the show. But first, let me introduce you to a man. You better hide your partner and hide your Sharpies, because he's bound to give every one of them a smile on their face for the morning. Mr. Paul Asadoria.
Welcome, everyone, to Ball Security Weekly. It's episode number 749, recorded on July 27th, 2022, right here in G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island. To my left, Mr. Larry Pesce.
Howdy. The man
What's
with
going on, man?
Man with two laptops tonight.
You're rocking the double laptops.
Yep.
You couldn't get your Mac on the display, could you?
It's a Mac. It should just work.
Except when it doesn't.
And then your hands are tied to try to fix it. And that's where we were. Every other machine in the studio works except for mine.
Right. Even my Linux laptop worked, that's usually not the
Never
case.
the case.
Never the case. It did, though. Mr. Josh Marpet is on the lines remotely. Josh, welcome.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Oh, there he is. There he is.
Whoa.
Fantastic.
Pleasure to be here, as always.
Yes. There you go. Thank you for doing that again. Mr. Tyler Robinson is here with us. Tyler, welcome.
As always, it's a pleasure to have Josh here.
Yeah.
And that is
It
an awesome
certainly is.
shirt, Tyler.
I think that's the second time you've worn that shirt on
Yes.
the show. Yeah.
Yes, it's
First
my
time
favorite.
I've seen it. It's awesome.
And he hasn't washed it. It's amazing. It's a
Oh,
good
hey.
thing he's remote.
It's vintage.
Mr. Lee Neely is here with us. Lee, welcome.
Good to be here. It seems like forever since I've seen y'all, so it's let's have a fun time.
Speaking of vintage, the shirt that Lee's wearing, not Lee.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's vintage for sure.
Yep. But you know what? The
Yeah,
best
You
part,
mean Lee is vintage?
the best part
Yes.
about that is it's not vintage enough to have the Security Weekly logo printed on the wrong side of the shirt.
That's right. And we printed the logo on pants. Remember that?
Yep.
It was part of a whole ensemble. Okay,
It was.
it was.
Was it as bad as Adrian Sanabria's underwear that he printed up?
No, it wasn't that bad.
No.
Okay.
Just a quick announcement. If you like the show and wouldn't mind going into your favorite podcast catcher and giving us a rating, we would be eternally grateful. Many of you have been listening to the show for quite a while and may not have gone back and done that in quite some time. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others have ways to rank podcasts. Getting those rankings in those ecosystems really helps our show. So thank you all very much for going ahead and doing that. We really do appreciate it. Now, Mr. Larry Pesce will present to us Apple AirTags. I kind of left it generic.
Yep.
I didn't call it hacking Apple AirTags.
Good.
Understanding the good, the bad, and the ugly about Apple AirTags. I wonder how many presentations in security have started with the good, the bad, and the ugly. A lot.
A lot. Yeah, so for this particular one, we are definitely going to cover doing some AirTag detection and simulation towards the end, but we want to sort of talk about what AirTags are all about and those types of things, sort of understand the technology and how we can start going about doing that detection and simulation, and then sort of leave an exercise onto the reader to take some of the basic tools, and we'll talk about some of those, and build something better, and taking the knowledge that we learn from sort of this to be able to build something larger scale and so forth. And we'll even talk about some larger scale stuff and some pretty interesting hackery that has gone on within the last 2 weeks or so with some of these AirTag stuff.
Yeah, my wife AirTagged all of our dogs.
Yep.
So this is very pertinent to my interest because I really want to hack those things and just haven't gotten around to it. So Larry, you've spent some time with them.
I have.
And I'm very anxious to see what you have uncovered because they beep at like seemingly random times. But I know that's probably not random.
Yep. Now, to a point, it is random. And I've had some pretty unusual experiences with my AirTag. So, for example, I have 2 of them here. And in fact, I grabbed one of them out of my backpack that I go travel with, and one that's been sitting on my desk and hasn't been powered on and is unregistered and so forth.
You hacker, you.
I know. But the ironic part is that the one that is in my backpack is registered to my iPhone and the Find My network, which is shared with my family. Yet it beeps as if it has been lost and is placed on another person, and doesn't appear to be tied to any of my accounts. And in fact, one of our kids got notified that there's an AirTag following you.
Yeah. Is that so? Are you going to go into the purpose
we're
of beeping?
We're going to do a little bit of that.
I'll let you do that.
So let's dig into it. What are these silly AirTag things from Apple? I think they run about $25 a piece. That's what I bought them at Christmas time. They had a 4-pack for $99 at Christmas time, Black Friday sale. So that's a reasonable cost. They're intended to be a reasonably inexpensive device for tracking things that you often might misplace: keys, dogs, kids, backpacks, and so forth, and something that you might like to know where they are. You could not do that with a spouse too, that requires some open communication with your spouse and so forth, or your significant other or your partner. But put it on something that you can track and have it talk to. So they're also battery powered and water resistant. They're not waterproof, so they can be out in the rain. You can let the dogs out in the backyard to do their business when it's raining out. You could drop your keys in the pool and it'll be okay for a little bit, but you're not going to want to submerge them and leave them there. They won't work constantly underwater.
Okay, so you can't put them in places that you'll fit a lot of things in later, right?
Right. You probably wouldn't want to do that. No, because that hopefully it's not your first time that you did that. So the way these work is effectively using some radio technology to connect to the Apple iOS ecosystem, and not just your device, any device in the Apple iOS ecosystem, to report their location back to the Apple's Find My network. So remember when we started getting some of those things with the Apple devices where you could just turn the Find My stuff. So if you put your phone down, you walked away from it, you could go to a Mac and log in, and it would tell you exactly where the phone was. And this was great for when your phone or your laptop got stolen. If Find My was on, you could potentially provide that information to the police. And I know we covered a number of stories in the past about some successful recovery for those types of things. But they've expanded that Find My feature of the phone and the laptops and so forth to the very small device that you can stick in a pocket on a keychain and so forth. So there isn't any location data that is specifically stored here. The location is retrieved from the devices that it is communicating with in the iOS and the Apple ecosystem that can see it and then are transmitting that back to the back end to the Find My network.
Which I find interesting because there's been a lot of stabs at this particular solution to the problem of I want to be able to find things. Was it Tracker and a bunch of other companies tried to do it?
Tile.
Yep.
But I think they just didn't have enough devices everywhere. So it was only logical that Apple would go, well, crap, everyone's got an iPhone somewhere in range for more than any other company could build the infrastructure.
Right.
So why don't we just do it and knock everyone else out of the market, become the market leader and track tracking stuff.
Yep. And that was, so you talk about the location and the things in the field. This was one of the similar things that Apple did with geolocation for their stuff too. Initially, we're getting way off, whatever, but initially Apple licensed their location awareness from another company, and I can't remember what it was. But they realized, why are we licensing this stuff? We have billions of devices in the field that have GPS, they have cellular, and they have Wi-Fi. And we can use all three of those technology coordination and report those back to Apple using an undocumented API call, which was then used with the tool iSniff GPS to determine location for various Wi-Fi networks and other devices on the planet. So, fun stuff there.
So what you're saying is that Apple is happy to steal your bandwidth, your processor power, and your antennas to find other people's stuff.
Absolutely. That is exactly what I'm saying.
Cool.
Admittedly, stealing the antennas, they're probably limited impact. Stealing your bandwidth nowadays, again, probably limited impact, and computing power probably also limited impact, especially when we see the size of some of the text implications that come out of something like the AirTag stuff. So I'd argue it's limited, and I'll emphasis mine here has benefits for everyone.
I'm not disputing that.
No, we're raising points.
Are they being open about the fact that they're utilizing, like, for example, I'll give you another one, Xfinity, Comcast. If you had an Xfinity fiber, fiber optic modem and a wireless modem, it would, or wireless router rather, in your house, it would spin up an Xfinity access point that any Xfinity subscriber could use. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not for my family, that's for everybody else. Why are you using my bandwidth? And you could turn that off. Mm-hmm. But if you didn't know about it and didn't turn it off, you were providing bandwidth to any Xfinity subscriber that wandered by your house. Mm-hmm. And this is a similar type of arrangement, isn't it?
So that said, I'd argue it is a very similar type of arrangement, but it's probably in all of that very fine print that we that none of us actually read in some of our agreements when we first turn on our Apple or our iOS-based device. So I really don't know what the legality of any of that type of stuff, but
I'm sure it's in the EULA. I mean, exactly. The iCloud EULA prohibited you from using iCloud to create nuclear devices back in like 2015 or something.
Yeah, exactly. No one knew it. So ultimately, Apple claims that they have these devices anonymous and encrypted with privacy built in. Yeah. About that.
Now, is the Find My network, is that exclusive to Apple and Apple products? There's not like an SDK or development pack or things or protocols and technology you can leverage to kind of compete with inside of that space? So
right now, we're going to say that it is an iOS Apple only ecosystem. But wait, there's more.
Yes,
we'll get to some of that stuff. So privacy and security built in and all that stuff. But what are the purpose of these things? These purpose are useful for tracking the location of your stuff or someone else's, and for that matter, it's also useful for others to track the location of your stuff or you. All over the globe with global coverage with iOS devices for these devices to connect to report their location back to the Find My network. So I could take my AirTag, join it to my Find My network, and put it in your car, and then I knew where your car ended up. It doesn't even need to be your device on connecting to my stuff. It could be my AirTag connecting to your iOS devices or someone else's iOS devices while you're traveling on the highway. Okay. All right. So some things that they do for the anonymity, they do have the ability within the AirTag identifiers and some of the portions, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. There's ultimately, they've changed some of the way they do some of the stuff, that there's, quote, a short observation period for, quote, an unknown device, an unregistered device, and some of the other ones, in that they do some key rotation fairly often. But if you haven't changed the keys, the tracking is still possible for up to 24 hours. So one of the ways that they've gotten around some of these privacy things, oh no, you dropped it in my car and you can track me. They change that identifier every 24 hours. So, the identifier has changed. I'm not nearby. I don't know what that new identifier is. Now I've potentially lost the ability to track it. And that may be where some of my issues end up. So what are these privacy issues? Well, you take a tag that you registered, one registered to, say, my backpack, and I go and drop it into Paul's backpack over in his office over here. Maybe I super glue it or epoxy it to the underside of the vehicle, insert some other evil action for tracking someone. There was reports of like a 14-year-old girl who had one dropped in her bag at Disney, like her shopping bag, and then she carried it all around the park and to her car, and that was the terrifying part. Carried it to the car and then back to her resort and so forth. So insert your evil action for getting tracking device onto someone you want to track. Now, these devices will be detected by the Apple ecosystem through Bluetooth and a few other technologies we'll talk about. The problem is that by having it an Apple-only ecosystem, if you have an Android device, device doesn't have its input into the ecosystem, and it cannot technically tell that there's an AirTag nearby that is potentially belong to someone else that is traveling with you and is, quote, acting as a tracking device.
Your iPhone will tell you that.
Your iPhone will now tell you that.
Now
it didn't used to.
It didn't used to. Okay.
Right. But because it's Apple and it's the Find My network, it's an Apple only type of thing.
So but, I mean, that's also on the other side of that double-edged sword. If I Apple AirTag my e-bike and someone steals it and they have an Apple device, it will tell them, oh, there's a new AirTag
and it's
nearby,
been traveling with you.
And it's been traveling with you. And they go, oh, I got to search the e-bike for this AirTag and smash it. But at that point, I've already probably have their location, at least where they are right now. So, yeah. It can work on the opposite if I'm actually using this to protect myself or my devices.
Right. So thinking about that, there's a quote from Apple that says, "We take customer safety very seriously and are committed to AirTag's privacy and security. AirTag is designed with a set of proactive features to discourage unwanted tracking. At first in the industry that both informs users of an unknown AirTag might be with them and deter bad actors from using an AirTag for nefarious purposes. If users ever feel their safety is at risk, they are encouraged to contact local law enforcement who can work with Apple to provide any available information about the unknown AirTag." But what if I'm an Android user, Larry? Well, there is an app in the Google Play Store called Tracker Detect, and I think there's probably a couple of others now as well, and I think we feature one on later on in the slides as well. So there is an app that you can put on your Android device, but it's not baked into the underlying operating system like Find My is. So you have to knowledgefully open the app and leave it open and running in the background and give it access to Bluetooth, chewing up your battery, running as a background process. And if you reboot your phone, you close the app, that detection goes away. Okay. So detection under Android is pretty inconsistent. We do have definite documented cases. There's a case about the Disney one, and I searched for a bunch of them, and there was a lot that didn't have a lot of hard evidence behind them. It was just a lot of, we felt weird. But definitely there were some reports to police, specifically one in Naugatuck, Connecticut, where there was some AirTags used as part of some domestic violence, domestic stalking cases. Husband wanted to know where ex-wife was going, or soon-to-be ex-wife, and all of those types of things. Okay. And that was arguably the one that I could find the most details of. There's been a bunch that have been provided to law enforcement, and honestly, I think many of the law enforcement agencies don't necessarily have the capacity to understand what some of these threats look like. They're still relatively new in the grand scheme of things, so I think they're probably going to get better at it. All right, so let's take a look at the technical details of these AirTags. There's been a bunch of teardowns and so forth, so this is not anything groundbreaking, but it's assembled largely from commodity industry available components. Specifically, it does feature the Nordic NRF 52832 radio chipset for Bluetooth low energy and near field communications. And then other components without. The only one that is sort of unique to Apple is their own U1 chip, which is used for ultra wideband or UWB, and we'll talk about that as well. So specifically in the technology here, we've got 3 different RF techniques, 3 different effective radios for doing the tracking for interacting with networks. We've got Bluetooth Low Energy, we've got NFC, and we've got UWB. If a device goes lost, meaning it's away from its owner's device, so my backpack away from my phone, my backpack gets stolen, it is away from my phone for 3 days, it enters what's known as lost mode, in which some of the device changes. It then starts making a noise every 6 hours, if movement is detected.
So only after 3 days does it start making a noise every 6 hours?
Automatically on its own.
Automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it goes away from your device, 3 days later, it will start making noise every 6 hours, or if it's moved.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an automatic
So
thing.
how does it detect motion then?
It's got some sort of tilt sensor and those types of things. Fairly common in some of the system on a chips type of stuff now.
Some like vibration sensor or gyration sensor?
Yep, most likely gyration. There was another question there. I heard a big gasp.
Oh, I was just thinking, how long is the battery going to last?
Battery lasts quite a long time. I have yet to replace them. They are user replaceable batteries, and
Ooh.
yep, standard size batteries. I believe they're the CR2032 batteries, the standard sort of watch battery type things that we've got all over the place, and they are user removable, user replaceable. Okay, so so it will do effectively how we can detect that these devices are in the environment. The easy way is that they use Bluetooth Low Energy to advertise their presence. Hey, I'm an AirTag and I'm here. If you observe me, report my location to the Find My network. So when you are near, it gives you a connection interval of 1 second, and when you are further away, it does its advertisements every 2 seconds. So lots of advertisements with Bluetooth Low Energy.
What's the naming convention? Is it named literally like AirTag serial number? Or
We'll talk about that.
I'm sorry.
No worries. Great question. So the RF technology that we've got used here through the various chipset, we've got Bluetooth Low Energy, effectively in this case Bluetooth 5.1, which does its local notification of presence. Hey, I'm here. Be received by another Bluetooth device, in this case an iPhone or a Mac, to report it to the Find My network. And it will do 2 different types of advertisements. One when it's brand new and unpaired to a Find My network account, and a registered advertisement. Hey, I belong to someone, and based on the data that I'm spitting out every 1 to 2 seconds, is different than an unregistered one. So we have the ability to determine an unregistered versus a registered AirTag. Also, we have the ability to do near-field communication, so we could take our phone and we could put it near Android 2, and we can read one of these devices for both unregistered and registered URLs. It will give us a URL so that we could tie that to a particular person in the attempt to replace or return that lost wallet or set of keys or dog to its rightful owner. Okay. And then finally, ultra-wideband or UWB is used for some precision location finding and distance detection. There's still a lot of research to be done under UWB. All right, the NFC part can be used by anyone who discovers an AirTag to scan. Paul, I could give you this one right now. I could give you that one right now. You could scan it with your Android device, and it should tell you some information. It should give you a URL that goes to Apple where you can say, hey, I found this device. Can you tell me maybe who I need to return it to?
This one says backpack on it.
Yep,
so.
That's the one that goes in my backpack.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to, get to keep it.
No.
So that NFC read gives you a URL, and that URL gives an ID at Apple's website to be able to return that lost object. It effectively is acting as a MyFair Plus, so fairly common standard within the MyFair sets of NFC stuff. So NFC is based on ISO 14443, which then has it's layers upon layers. RFID, then MyFair protocol, then the individual NFC stuff within MyFair. So we've got some examples of those two different URLs for registered and unregistered, and a bunch of decoding about what those particular items include, including the product ID, the battery level, some versions, and the individual device address, the serial number, the Bluetooth version, and a variable public identity with the PI flag. The fun part is you can start taking that URL and start populating it with the individual serial number, and you can walk through all of Apple's AirTags by incrementing the URL. But you might be able to go to prison for that. Just ask Andy Armhire. Exactly. All right. So another technology, UWB. You notice I've changed the order in here, that we're leaving Bluetooth Low Energy to the end. UWB in Apple's U1 chipset uses 5 channels in the 6.5 gigahertz. Uses channels 5 and 9 in the 6.5 gigahertz and 8 gigahertz ranges, using BPSK with a single antenna for measuring distance and not direction. So in this case, measuring distance about how far away you are, as opposed to using Bluetooth Low Energy with the angle of arrival and the angle of departure with Bluetooth 5.1.
Right.
So I'm thinking one ping only, Vasily.
Yes, and give me one ping only. Yeah, so with UWB in this particular case, there's still a lot of research going into the UWB stuff. Where a lot of the research has been focused is on the Bluetooth Low Energy side, because Bluetooth is incredibly more simple, has been a simplified implementation of the Bluetooth Classic. So Bluetooth 1 and Bluetooth 2. So Bluetooth 4 and Bluetooth 5 mostly classified as Bluetooth Low Energy. They have a much more simplified channel hopping mechanism, that they are static and they are known channel hopping. Unlike Bluetooth Classic, it was pseudo-random based on some information that you had to discover as a secret. In advertising mode, which was limited, this has a simple set that is known. If you observe a Bluetooth Low Energy packet on a specific channel, you know where the next one is, mod 37. Okay. They, instead of using 79 channels in Bluetooth Classic, Bluetooth Low Energy uses 40 channels. 37 of them for data and 3 of them for advertisements. So in this case, Bluetooth Low Energy is going to, for the AirTags, is going to be using those 3 advertising channels with the little beacon. Hey, I'm here. I have this individual data in those beacons. And those advertisements are always available and continuous on all 3 of those advertising channels. Paul, you remember when we had to pair Bluetooth Classic devices to our laptops or our phones? You had to put them into
pairing mode.
Or pairing mode or discoverable mode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no longer. Bluetooth Low Energy is always in discoverable mode. And it's always saying it's here on those 3 channels.
Larry,
that are predictable.
Can I back you up a step?
Yeah.
I'm always angry.
Always angry.
So with the registered and unregistered URLs, and the ability to grab a URL from a nearby AirTag, if I have a car driving by, and if you're going towards this, let me know and I'll shut up. But if I have a car driving by and I want to know who's in the car and there's an AirTag in the car, can I check that URL and see how to return it to them and then know who's in the car? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does make sense what you're saying. However, common NFC read range is 3 to 5 centimeters.
Yeah, I've seen people build bigger.
Me too.
It's hard.
Me too. Oh, definitely. And I can cite examples with Kristen Paget building RFID readers she was driving down the street with the stuff powered in the backseat of her car and was reading RFID-based badges from the sidewalk, effectively driving down the street while in the RFID tags in the lobbies of buildings. So yeah, it is largely conceivable that this could happen, but it does require,
because you said NFC, but you also said MyFair Plus.
Yep.
So it is can you get that URL from the RFID as well as the NFC?
Yeah, RFID and NFC, same ultimate technology.
Then I can do it from 100 feet away.
Yeah. And NFC is all about the data formatting and less about the technology. So with RFID and the MyFair standards and so forth. NFC is really only giving us a way to accurately format the data so that it can be read across multiple manufacturers.
So what I'm hearing is that Dragorn is going to be building this into Kismet so that I can tell which AirTag is going by, and Handorf will build it into Soho Sigint so that we can tell which AirTag is going by the house.
That'd be awesome.
Do you know what I'm saying? Am I hallucinating, or does this make sense?
Nope, I love it. And I'll give them a jump start on how they can potentially find some of this stuff. So let's take a look at some of those advertisements.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hell.
Oh, hell. Yeah, exactly. So within those Bluetooth low energy advertisements, there's an indicator that, yep, I'm an AirTag. And then there are some data about the individual AirTag. And some of those have some fixed values and some of them are variable. Okay. So specifically, we've got the advertisement length, the advertisement type, the company ID, the payload type, the payload length, and some unknown data that is yet to be discovered. And all of those particular portions in this unregistered AirTag have a specific format, 1EFF004C0719. And then some 25 bytes of variable data, which likely indicate, and this is Bluetooth low energy as opposed to NFC. When that variable data likely indicates the individual AirTag. We're still, as a community, we're still figuring that out. On a registered AirTag advertisement, the data is encrypted with an elliptic curve cryptography key, specifically ECC P224, which has a public key which changes daily at 4 a.m. And the packets include the upper 2 bits of that ECC key, the private key, the public key, and a counter, which updates every 15 minutes. And they advertise on the registered side every 2,000 milliseconds, aka 2 seconds. Okay. So again, advertising length, advertising type, company ID, payload type, payload length, that is all very similar. 1EFF004C. 112 in hex, 12 is a Find My Network broadcast, and then 19 indicates the payload length for the remaining of a status, the public key, the upper 2 bits of the private key, and then a counter. So that public key is what is identifying each one of these devices uniquely, and that changes every day at 4 a.m. So how do we start finding these things based on some things that we know about Bluetooth low energy beacons and AirTags and their identification? iOS is trivial, right? They've got the built-in tools for that. Given the ecosystem, that kind of makes sense. The apps for Android exist but aren't likely real-time. You have to remember to start the app. They have to run in the background. People may shut them off because it's chewing up their battery and so forth. And Linux detection is non-existent until sort of now. But we can cobble a bunch of stuff together with the Linux Blues utilities. Mm-hmm. So AirTag detection under Linux using HCI dump with a compatible Bluetooth adapter. And I happen to be using the one that we use from the 617 class, one of my favorite, the Pirani Sena UD100. I don't get any money from these, but any Bluetooth low energy compatible adapter could be used for this. And in fact, I actually had some issues with this on our next step. Not the detection, the creation. So I need to actually just try another Bluetooth adapter on some of that. So effectively, all we need to do is do an HCI dump, which takes all of the Bluetooth low energy packets that it can observe on those advertising channels, and we can then pipe that to grep, looking for specific strings within that output, and then we can find individual either registered or unregistered AirTags.
Is that dongle only Bluetooth low energy or also other Bluetooth classes?
These are Bluetooth Classic, I believe AMP, and low energy to Bluetooth 4.2. So Bluetooth 1 of its varieties, Bluetooth 2 of its varieties, I think Bluetooth 3, which is Bluetooth AMP, and Bluetooth 4.x. It will not do Bluetooth 5.1, which has some additional features. Arguably... Go ahead.
Does it allow transmission as well? Like, is this something that you could leverage in, say, denial of service or flood a network with unregistered or malformed Bluetooth low energy packets of the same variety.
Stand by. Stand by. So yeah, absolutely. We can use HCI tool. We can run it through grep and all that type of stuff. Or we could automate this with a tool called AirTag Scan.sh. And don't worry, I'll tell you where we can find that. And in this case, we've got an example on this slide of running AirTag Scan.sh, which is effectively running an HCI dump command looking for doing regex on both these registered and unregistered AirTag strings. And then spitting out the data when it finds it. And in this case, I've colorized the portions of the AirTag based on that search, matching those particular portions. All right. What about standing up one to do some simulation so that we could potentially flood some networks, Tyler, or overload and all that type of stuff? Absolutely, we can do that with standard Blues utilities, with HCI tool for setting up-down status and enabling Bluetooth low energy. HCI configured that, and then HCI tool to do a bunch of commands to set the actual advertisements and then start sending the advertisements and its individual data. So we're manipulating it. The advertisement data manually by defining the specific Bluetooth low energy command codes and the hex that we want to send. So we've got a couple.
That's like really hard to tie.
Don't worry.
Larry.
Yeah.
Larry, I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
It's another interesting one. If you clone an Apple AirTag, one that you own, because we're doing this legally.
Yep.
And your AirTag is at home and you're cloning it at the studio, just for examples, will your phone tell you that your AirTag is away from you? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And I think that is an area left up to experimentation, because you cannot technically clone an AirTag. Because in order to derive that public ECC key, you need the private key.
Right.
And only 2 bytes of that public key, if I remember correctly, are sent in the air. The private key are sent in the air, and I think it's the private key. So in order to do that, you have to engage in some hardware hacking, and the portions where the private key on those devices are code protected, now we start getting into some voltage glitching attack to recover them.
Well, you'd have to pull it off the...
You'd have to effectively. You're largely destroying your AirTag to clone it. But wait, we'll talk. Yeah. We will talk about that just a little bit. And I know we're getting.
They're $89 on Amazon for a 4-pack right now. So
perfect,
come on,
worth it. So here we've got a couple of commands to be able to set the radio up to be doing low energy advertisement, setting the Bluetooth adder, the Bluetooth address, effectively a MAC address, and the specific AirTag commands to generate AirTag advertisements. And some notes down on the bottom here. Now, in this particular case, I know the private key, the elliptic curve cryptography private key. Why? Because I used another project to create a fake AirTag so that I could create these commands, and we'll show you that. Okay. Now, also with that, we could automate this process with AirTag create.sh, and we can have it create an AirTag in either unregistered or registered format, because those headers change a little bit. Okay, so it's effectively taking these commands and running it several times. So
wait, they in the research community understands enough to be able to create a new AirTag.
Correct.
Not impersonate another one because of the cryptography, from what you've described so far.
A little bit. Okay. So that really gets into our going further slide. Effectively, with the Blues utilities and the AirTag scan and the AirTag create, we're giving you the heavy lifting to figure out what you need to do to be able to detect and create. Mm-hmm. It's not a massive detection network. It's not super crazy. The creation of AirTags uses a fixed set of keys, and it doesn't do that 4 a.m. rotation and any of those types of things. It's fixed, and it's a shell script, so you can put your own stuff in there. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways in which I generated my own AirTag so that I knew what those keys were, so I had those values, and I've since deleted it, is I used a tool called OpenHaystack. And OpenHaystack is macOS only, and modern versions of macOS, which implements a free and open source implementation from Simu Labs to add your own stuff to the Apple's Find My network. including the ability to register your own AirTag with the Find My network. You get the keys, and then you can take those keys and you can put it on a Linux distribution, such as a Raspberry Pi or a Pi 0W, or you can even program other similar types of Nordic chipsets that can be powered with the CR2302 batteries. So you can make your own small devices for tracking that will register with the Find My network.
With this project, get those registered in the Apple Find My network. Which
is
interesting that Apple would allow that.
Yep. Well, because someone's gone and reversed engineered the API that allows those to be registered and so forth. Now, with the Open Haystack stuff currently, they do not have the key rotation for some of that happening. So it's a static key and it never changes. So this provides some opportunity for, we talked about that 24-hour stalking period, and then the keys change and then you might lose that ability. These do not. These do not do that key rotation. So you can potentially do that with your own device with, say, an NRF51 or an ESP32 small development type board, and not lose that ability after 24 hours. The other one that Josh and Tyler, where you were sort of getting to, and maybe even you were last week, end of the week before, there was some additional research released from Simu Labs, the authors of Open Haystack, that they were actually able to make actual clones by unlocking the portion of the memory on an AirTag using a voltage glitching attack, recover the private keys, and then unlock the entirety of the firmware, dump the firmware, and then reprogram that to a new AirTag using a voltage glitching attack to unlock those protected portions of memory and write the whole thing back. And they did that by voltage glitch, dump. Hey, Paul, here's your file. Here's my file. Clone that to an AirTag 800 miles away. And it showed up on Find My network 800 miles away. Now, Josh, to the question you asked, I don't know.
Exactly. So I've got the AirTag right here in front of me, and then there's the exact clone 800 miles away.
Yep.
What happens?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, come on. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got
to try it. Absolutely. Now, the Simu Labs folks may have actually indicated what happened, but I'm not positive in their paper. There's a link to the paper on the slides, and we'll make sure these slides are available as well.
Thank you.
So
I tweeted at you and Russ and Dragorn, and Russ is already... Yeah, okay. Never mind. Hi, Russ, if you're watching.
That means there's no authentication to connect to the Apple Find My network then.
I don't believe. Yeah, you're saying that, and I think you're right.
There's nothing that prevent the cryptography essentially prevents the cloning of the tags.
Yep, but
not joining of not joining of the network.
So, and I didn't dig into it about the joining of the network, but there's some interesting things when you go and install Open Haystack. In that, when you install Open Haystack, there was one of the Apple Guardians, the security things that you had to disable, so that you could install an unsigned Apple Mail extension. And the Apple Mail extension allowed you access to some specific function calls that effectively allowed you to populate the Find My network. So I think there was some authentication.
Maybe, okay, so only from an Apple device.
Right.
They can make those.
Yes, and allowing those unsigned Apple Mail, extensions. Now, there's some talk in some of the bug reports and so forth that are saying along the lines of there's a new method for being able to do this. You don't need to do this whole Apple Mail, shell game and so forth. But there's still open tickets for them to implement that type of stuff. Yeah. All right. So to wrap us up, yay, new tools, right? We've got some new capability through using the Blues utilities, and we've got AirTag Scan and AirTag Create, which I put in my GitHub repository. So pull requests are happily accepted. I very much pulled the Josh Wright approach to tool development on this one. I got the tool as far as I needed to make it do the things that I wanted it to. If you want more, build it. Like, I provide the base for you. Like, please take this and run with it. These are ideas about a bunch of things that I've researched, and I implemented them a little bit differently so that folks could help to understand. And build this, make this something that is distributable so that we can put this on a whole bunch of other stuff and, build our own detection network and add this to your access points in your environment that have Bluetooth so that you can find AirTags in your enterprise environment. Like, you now have the understanding how to make this work. And you know how to build one that you can actually test that your detection is working.
Does the AirTags update their own firmware, or is there a way to update firmware?
So there should be a way to update firmware. I don't know what the update process is currently. I didn't look into that particular portion. But that is part of the benefit of using Bluetooth 5.1, in that Bluetooth 5.1 has some significantly larger packet lengths and can do packet chaining, effectively fragmentation, so that it's much easier to deliver a software update OTA over the air.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas
But
Bluetooth 4 and less, the packets were significantly smaller.
But there must be a key or something that is used for validation of that firmware update, I would imagine.
I mean, you and I have been doing the IoT thing long enough that there should be, right?
Yeah.
Again, that's an area for research that is still... well, if you think about that, those researchers took a dump of the memory and they put it on a different device.
Right, but if that key is in that firmware somewhere, right? That's how they did it with Intel ME.
Yep.
Is each module within Intel ME's firmware is signed, and so since the whole thing wasn't signed as a whole, you can pluck off, like, I don't want this functionality.
Yep.
And when I put together a smaller image, it's still valid because those signatures are valid. I removed the modules that also had the signatures, and I ripped those out.
Yep.
Also, kind of remind me of microcode updates as well, which are not just anyone can go update the microcode on your CPU. There's keys involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you had a couple of legit questions in the chat on Discord.
Sorry, I missed those. I apologize.
That's okay. So the aside from a comment that it looks like the code changes at 0 hour universal time.
Yep. Makes sense. 4 a.m. my time, right?
The one is, are AirTags fundamentally different from other similar devices such as Tile? Are the weaknesses and other things similar across most of these things of this type? Or is it just that AirTags are part of the whole, every iPhone looks for them network and thus getting more research and no one cares about the other ones?
I think probably the latter. So I think probably all of those things. I suspect that similar types of failures exist in all of them. And given the dominance in the mobile phone market, I'm not surprised that Apple took significant more heat for this, especially where they leverage all of these other devices. Arguably, there are some similar types of failures in that if I don't have the Tile app on my iPhone, I don't know that someone dropped the Tile in my backpack.
Yeah.
So, and no,
except that it would be much heavier.
True. Also, by not having the Tile app on my phone, it's also not communicating my phone to use my phone to report its location automatically. You'd have to find some other way to do that. And I haven't dug into Tile enough to know how some of that application is doing. I think the adoption of some of the ubiquity of Apple devices and with some of that technology about sort of always being on really makes this more of a threat and a more active target. Yeah. So, great question from Discord and others. So,
yeah, that was Dimitri, by the way.
I'm not surprised. Awesome.
I'm gonna throw something in here because Tile is not as widely used. It could give somebody who has a raised threat profile actually unreasonable confidence. Well, my iPhone isn't telling me that there's AirTags around me. That's because it's not an AirTag. I'm using a Tile. And so is that security? That's not security through obscurity. That's cybercrime through obscurity.
But then then again, not having researched Tile enough, how does Tile know to tell its owner where it is? If it's...
because Tile is registered. I used to use them actually in my wallet. Tile is registered to you, your phone, your handset, your whatever. Yep. And anybody running Tile, it's always searching for Tile.
Right.
You have to give it permissions to search. And it's always searching for tiles in the area, and it reports back.
Gotcha. So you have to be running Tile. someone else near the victim needs to be running tile.
There's a lot of people that run tile.
And you have to give it the ability to search for tiles, which is probably makes sense.
You have to.
Right.
To install the app, you have to, I believe.
Fair enough. Okay. That's all I've got.
So, going back to my wife AirTag the dogs, and they beep a lot.
Yep.
But that it hasn't been 24 hours since my wife's phone has been near the tags.
Right.
Why do they beep?
I don't know. Because, see, that's the same thing. Like, the one that's backpack sits in my backpack in the front hallway. And my phone is in my office less than 25 feet away from my backpack in the hallway. Yet today, when I went to go grab this out of my backpack, I picked up my backpack and it went bleep, 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 bleep.
Because there was movement.
Because there was movement, and it hasn't contacted my phone in 3 days. They're 25 feet away.
Well, Larry, you do know that in wireless, I know you don't know wireless, but in wireless, sometimes walls can get in the way of the transmission of wireless signals.
True.
I recognize it's unfamiliar to you, sir.
True. Agreed.
But these are a high enough frequency, they should be able to get through walls without too much
just
trouble,
like Wi-Fi.
right?
Now, admittedly, they're probably lower power devices given the size and the battery capacity, lower output power. But to make note, these things are broadcasting registered every 2 seconds.
You should have walked by it with your phone at some point during that time. That makes total sense.
I walked up to my backpack with the phone in my pocket, and it took me 2 seconds to get there.
Were you wearing lead pants, by the way?
I was wondering if you still had the tinfoil liner in the backpack.
Yeah. The lead underwear.
RF shielding
RF
pants
shielding.
or RF shielding bag?
Yep.
Yeah.
But of course, go ahead, Tyler.
No, I was just going to say, like, these kind of networks and this kind of technology and communication is what excites me and scares me at the same time. You start to think about the fact that we are leveraging a mass scale mesh network in order to communicate back to a central location. Like, now I'm thinking about, like, from a C2 standpoint, can I bundle this up in Bluetooth Low Energy, NFC, have this pass from a mobile phone to another mobile phone in the area, jump to a computer that is reporting on the same, Find My network? Like, these are the networks that enable, large scale botnets and C2 and highly covert channels. So, like, we really have to kind of think about the security of how this impacts us in the long term, I think.
I'm going to argue with you slightly. I agree with you, by the way, but I'm going to argue with you slightly. It's not a mesh network because they're not talking to each other. They're reporting back to a centralized command and control network.
They are talking to each other. Someone else is taking that data, passing it from one to the next and to the next.
No. The actual tags aren't I think not tile but tracker. I think the tags talk to each other and create a mesh.
But with the AirTags, if let's say it's your tag, Tyler, okay, and you leave it behind, and my iPhone picks up that your tag is here, and it goes, it's far away from Tyler. I need to report back. It reports back to Apple. It doesn't report back to your phone. Okay.
Correct.
And then your phone sees, hey, so it's a point to multi-point, not really a mesh. I'm being pedantic, but whatever. But the big thing is, this is a botnet. This is exactly a botnet. This is using phones or devices of some sort for something that the owner of that device does not want or has not explicitly given permission for. And, Larry's right. It's in the fine print somewhere in the iCloud 75 page EULA that took you less than 3 seconds to click through.
Took it that long?
But it is literally a botnet. Is it not, Larry?
Well, I mean, what happens when we can leverage the iOS or manipulate this Find My traffic BLE protocol to have it point to, say, a different C2 server? Like,
absolutely. This is a built-in botnet.
Or we use the extended advertising that are unused within some of that portion, maybe not even have it be valid IDs or registered data so that we can point it to a bunch of AirTags that have defined data, or how can we use this for data exfiltration and so forth?
Data exfil all day. Yeah.
Yep. Hence why we talk about scanning for these damn AirTags in your environment using a simple shell script that now you guys should go build something on. What
if the AirTag could had a little tiny bit of storage on it and could track all the MAC addresses and Wi-Fi addresses that it saw as you left it in a Dropbox at a Target?
Or maybe there's already that data with ad tracking IDs tied to your MEID that binds Wi-Fi and is stored in a mass database for consumer advertising companies to leverage.
100%. 100%.
Yep. Awesome.
Fantastic, Larry. Thank you so much. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
With that, we'll take a short break and come back with the security news. Stay tuned.